This is Minat Sylvester, and I am an Elixir language enthusiast, and I've been in the community for a couple of years now. And today, with this video, I'm going to be starting off a tutorial series for the Elixir Programming Language. So we'll be starting off from real basics in this series, and we might go all the way up to building a couple of Phoenix apps. If you're new to the language, you don't have to worry because we're going to be starting off from the real basics. Before we begin anything, let's have a quick look at the docs and see what they have to say about the language. So when you open up the docs, you see it is a dynamic functional language. So previously, if you have never worked with a functional language for object-oriented programmers, it is going to be a little different because you cannot iterate over stuff here, and you will have to take a functional and recursive approach. So with most of the time the object-oriented approach to a problem is not going to work. So while we go through the series, we'll also look at how to think in functions so that you can use that for other functional languages you learn. So that is one thing. And if you look further, you see it is scalable and maintainable, and you see Elixir leverages a long virtual machine. So a long virtual machine, if you've never heard of it, just like languages like Java, Scala, or Clojure runs on the Java virtual machine, Elixir runs on top of something called a long virtual machine. So it is pretty old, to be honest, a long virtual machine, and it is widely used in the telecom industry because of its concurrency. A long VM is known for its fault tolerance and its high degree of scalability and concurrency. So Elixir, it inherits all of this power from a long virtual machine, and how it does is another topic entirely, and we'll be looking at it later in the series, obviously. For now, let's just focus on the basics. Let's just get ourselves running into this language. So let me just say what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be building a very basic calculator app which takes two numbers and performs the simple arithmetic operations on them. So one way we could do it is get the two numbers and the operation to be done as three separate inputs from the user. So that is one way, but we're not going to be doing it that way. Just to have some fun, we'll be doing it in another way. So we are going to get a single input from the user as a string which looks something like this. So if you look at it, you have two numbers, and those are the numbers, the input numbers, and then you see a plus, which is the operator. So we have to add these two numbers. That is what the string basically means. So we'll ask the user to give input in this format, and then from this string we'll identify what is the operation to be performed. We'll perform it, and then we'll display it onto the screen. So let's not waste any time. Let's go do this. So first of all, we have to define a module, and I'm going to call it calculator. And then let's define a function to get input. So I'm going to call it get input, and it takes no argument, so you don't need the braces. Okay, so I'll declare a variable called input string, and I'll store the input in the string. So how we get input is we use io.gets for that. So for now, we'll just say enter a string, and we'll take the user to a new line, and let's just print it back into the screen now. So for that, we'll use io.puts. To run the file, we'll open up the terminal and fire up IEX. So as soon as you fire up IEX, you can see the long OTP version listed. So here it says SMP 8:8. So IEX can use up to 8 cores to perform its function. So this is one of the reasons why Elixir is known for its concurrency. So that is powered by this OTP you see over here. It is a protocol under a long virtual machine which directly accounts for all the powerful terms like scalability and fault tolerance and concurrence. We'll look in detail about all of that later in the series, but for now let's just stick to our calculator app. Let's get the basics running. So let's compile the file, and for that we have to type in C followed by the file name in quotes. So when you do that, you see the module calculator over there. We just defined in the file. So this means that the module calculator and the functions inside that module are available for use in the current IEX session. So let's go ahead. Let's call the get input function from our calculator module, and it says enter a string. For now I'm gonna just enter test, and you see it prints back test and a new line. The new line occurs because when you enter the input test, you also hit the return key, and the return key does something like this. It appends a new line character with the input. So that is the reason you have that new line. So we'll have to get rid of that manually, and for that what we're gonna do is we are going to pipeline our input onto a function called trim trailing from the string module. So trim trailing takes in a string and removes the new line character. So this thing you see over here is called the pipeline operator. So what this operator basically does, it takes the output of the previous operation. In our case it is getting the string, and then it gives it as an input to the following operation in line. So we're calling the trim trailing function. So the input for trim trailing function is a string which is provided from the operation of our input. So our string should not contain the new line character now. So let's save the file, compile it again. Now we have the module. Let's call the get input function again, and there you see it says enter a string, and now it prints it back with your new line. So that is fixed. So now the get input function is set up, and let's provide more detail to the user. So let's say enter numbers and operator in this format, or I'm going to give another option. I'm going to say type quit to exit the application. So let's just have a quick look at it. We'll compile the file again, and there you see. So now the user will know what to enter. So he has to give us the string in this format, or you can just type quit to exit the application. For now what it will do is print back. So that is the only thing we've done. So let's go ahead and let's perform more operations. So we have the string. Now we have to identify what to do with it. So I'll pass a string onto a function called identify operation, and I'll give it the input string as a parameter. So let's go ahead and define that function. And so let's do something more here. So we know that the string is either going to be a expression string or it is going to be quit. So let's use a case statement to check this out. So if it is quit, then all I have to do is say goodbye. If it is anything other than quit, which means it is an expression, but I do not know the value of the string, so I cannot match it or equate it or compare it, but I know there is a value. So in that kind of situations, I can just use an underscore to say there is a variable or there is a value. So in that case, it means it is an expression string, and I'll just pass the input string to identify operation. So now this looks good. So in identify operation, we know there's going to be a string. Let's go over this quickly in IEX. So we have a string which looks something like this. So I'm going to call it str. So now I need to separate these things. So there are three things in the string, and you can see they're separated by commas. So I'll call the string split function from the string module. So we pass in a string and we say we want them split on the commas. So we have a list. So this is what the split function does. It returns a list by splitting on the particular character we want it to. So I can match it onto a variable. For now I'll call it list, and I'll call the string.split function again. And now when I say list, it gives you that list. So I just captured the resultant in a variable. So now let's take a look at the Elixir's pattern matching concept. So pattern matching works like the equal to in mathematics, where the left hand side has to be equal to the right hand side. So here I have a list of 3 elements, and I know it will be a list of 3 elements whatever happens. So what I can do is I can just match it on to something like this. So I have a list of 3 variables. So this is what my list is going to look like. It is going to have the first number, the second number, and the operator. So that is the result of split function. So I can just match it onto this. And now when I say num1, we have the first number. So this is how pattern matching works. The left hand side is equal to the right hand side. Let's look at another example where it is not. So I say a comma b, and I pattern match it with a list of just 1 element, and there you see it's an error. Elixir will not accept pattern matching when the values are unequal. So this is the difference between assignment and pattern matching. So we can pattern match our string like this. We'll just replicate this in the program. So we'll declare a list of 3 variables. We'll say number1, number2, and the operator. It will be matched to the resultant of the split function. So now we have the operator, so we can check what operation to perform. I'm going to use the case statement for that again, and if it is a plus, if the operator is a plus, then I'll pass the numbers onto a function called add, and once that is done, I'll call the get input function again. If I do not, after the add function has been executed, the program will be terminated. I don't want it to terminate. I want it to go back and ask the user if he wants to perform an operation again or if he wants to quit the program. So I'll call the get input function, and now let's go and write that add function. So it has the 2 numbers, but there is a catch. See, when we split the string, you can see they're still strings, they're not integers or floats. So we'll fix that. So all we have to do is convert them into an integer. So we're going to add num1 and num2. So first of all, convert num1 into an integer, and that can be done using the toInteger function from the string module. So that takes care of number 1, and we're going to add it with the result of this. So this should work fine. So let's just clear this, fire up IEX again, and now I'll compile the file. We have the calculator module. I'm going to call the getInput function from the calculator module, and let's enter a string, and we have the result. So we have 1 plus 2, which equals 3. So add is the only operation I've defined, so that is what I can do now. Let's go ahead and define all the other operations. So when I enter quit, it says goodbye and exits it. That is exactly what I want. Oh, it's puts, it's not gets, so that is why the program was not exiting. Sorry about that. So before we run again, let's just copy paste this and modify whatever we have to get all the different operations. So this one is going to be subtract, this will be multiply, and this is going to be divide. Don't forget to change the signs. And let's define all those operators in the case statement. So if it is a minus, then pass the numbers on to subtract function. And finally, don't forget to call the getInput function. You don't want to exit it just like that. And finally, the divide operator. So this function is complete, and we also have the other functions. So now we should be good to go. Let's just go ahead and compile our file again. And let's call our getInput function. So I'm going to try a addition operation, and it works. Let's try our minus. So yeah, I'm sorry, that was my bad. Okay, so an addition operation, a subtraction operation, and then a multiply, and then we'll do a divide. We'll take up something that divides properly. For the divide operation, you get a float. This is because the default slash, which is used to divide, returns a string. You can convert into integer if you do something like this. just call the default div function, which is defined by the Elixir. So the div function takes in two arguments, obviously two numbers, and it will return the result as an integer. So let me just quit this, compile the file again. And now let me try the division operation again. So I'm going to say C6 3 and a slash, and now it returns an integer. That's good. So this is a very basic calculator done, and we have the basic arithmetic operations. So I guess this is a good basic setup for you guys, and try adding more functionality if you can, but I'm gonna stop here. And so we do now have a very simple working calculator. Try adding more functionalities, yes. And in the series, in the future, we'll also be talking on more than coding, like why is Elixir so famous, what are its applications, what is long virtual machines, and that OTP you looked earlier. So because these are what gives those powerful terms like scalability, maintainability, fault tolerance, meaning. So we'll be looking at all of that stuff, and we'll be doing more basics. We won't jump into anything. So this is where I'm gonna end it. So if you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Recommend it to your friends who wants to learn Elixir. So this is where I'm gonna sign off. This is Minute Sylvester, and until next time, keep coding.